Alright, what's going on everyone? Today we're going to take a look at the United Assault Challenger deck and see if it's still playable after the Throne of Eldraine standard rotation. And the answer is no, it's not. Absolutely not. Sadly, it is not remotely playable in the slightest. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, please don't shoot the messenger, but it's no longer playable. And trust me, I would love it to still be playable because I played Boros aggro, but nope, deck's dead. There is, however, a mono white aggro deck that's floating around, and it is similar to this. It even uses a few of the same cards that survived rotation. So if you like this style of play, there is a new deck, but it's basically a completely different deck. So you're basically rebuilding it from the ground up, and it's also not quite a competitive deck, or at least it hasn't posted any competitive results. So, you know, it's a little bit dubious, but we'll take a look at it in a little bit. So we just lost too much good stuff with Ixalan and Dominaria. Dauntless Bodyguard, Sky Marcher Aspirant, and Adonto Vanguard were a major reason why this deck was so good, because they all provided more power than their mana cost, and the Bodyguard and Vanguard made the deck really resilient to removal, which is really good in an aggro deck. It made board sweepers less good, which is kind of fantastic when you're going wide and trying to go fast. We also lost our best top end payoff in the form of Banalish Marshal, which is another reason the deck was so good. Dumping your hand over the course of the first, 2 or 3 turns, and then casting Marshal could just straight up end games before the opponent could come close to stabilizing. It was kind of great, but alas, it is no more. We're also losing History of Benalia and Legion's Landing, which were great value engines that would help us recover from removal spells by spitting out multiple tokens with a single card, so that's a bummer. And we also lost Leon and Vanguard and Snubhorn Century. Not every deck played these, but if you had either of them in your deck, those are gone as well. So yeah, we lost basically the whole deck. And let's just visualize this with the deck list. Here's the exact list you got out of the box, and if we highlight the cards we lost in red, yeah, that's basically all of them. Now this is my upgraded version. If you watched my how to upgrade the United Assault deck, if you watched that video, this is what we upgraded into, and here are the cards that this deck lost, and still practically all of them. And here is the most recent competitive list. This one is a little bit different, and we do see some newer cards in here, but if we highlight the cards this deck lost, it's still, yeah, it's basically all gone. There's a few cards, but not really enough to continue on with this thing. So what cards do we get to keep? Well, the white aggro deck still get to play Law Rune Enforcer and Tithe Taker. The Enforcer wasn't being played when the deck was first released, so it wasn't in the original deck or in my upgraded version, but the most recent decks have used this card and it's still sticking around, and Tithe Taker is actually pretty good, so that's still there. And we also get to keep a couple of the weaker payoffs in the form of Venerated Loxodon and Unbreakable Formation. The Venerated Loxodon is actually pretty good, it just wasn't nearly as powerful as Banalish Marshal. Oh, and there's also Healer's Hawk and Hunted Witness as well. These are still around, but the problem is these were really only good because we had Banalish Marshal, which would turn them into 2/2s, and without Marshal, these are just much weaker. I mean, obviously we can still tap them for Venerated Loxodon, but they're just not quite as good without the Banalish Marshal. And speaking of Banalish Marshal, how do we even come close to replacing this in a new mono white deck? I've actually seen lists replacing it with Heraldic Banner, which is Heraldic Banner. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. I mean, it's just it's not good. It's not good at all. I do wonder if maybe Linden is possibly a better choice here. We actually get a really sweet life gain curve if we play like turn 1 Healer's Hawk into turn 2 Pride Mate into turn 3 Linden, because then on turn 2 we play the Pride Mate, we attack for 1, we gain a life, and the Pride Mate becomes a 3/3, and then on turn 3 we play Linden, we attack with both creatures, and since Linden triggers on attacking, you would gain 2 life, or you gain 1 life twice, get 2 more counters, and the Pride Mate at that point is a 5/5 on turn 3 and attacking. So that's actually pretty cool, but it's not reliable, it's janky, it's fun, it's kind of cool and interesting, but it's not going to happen regularly, so I don't think it's very competitive. It's just it's a pretty cool curve, but that's like the ideal perfect scenario that you definitely can't rely on from game to game. There's also the Boros version though, and that still gets to keep a couple of its really good cards, including Tajik. Tajik is really good, but I don't think he can make up for the lack of a Banalish Marshal, and that doesn't change the fact that we still don't have, all of our good white aggro creatures. Anyway, I did mention earlier that there is a mono white deck floating around, and the new deck plays cards like Loyal Pegasus, Fairy Guide Mother, and Tomic. You can see that it has a heavier focus on flying. So it plays these little flying things, and then it plays a combination of Venerated Loxodon, Unbreakable Formation, and Heraldic Banner to try to punch through enough damage to win the game as early as possible. It's okay. You got your, aggressive white creatures. You've got some payoffs. At the time of this recording, the deck cost about $55 to $60, which is really cheap, and about $25 of that is in Gideon Blackblades alone. So if you have those, it's really not that expensive. But the problem is, it's not a tier 1 deck. It doesn't have any notable wins. There are only 2 lists that have been published. One is a 5-0 Magic Online League, and the other one is a Fandom Legends tournament. So you're spending that money on a deck that doesn't have any real solid competitive accolades. This hasn't won a GP or top 8 at a GP or anything like that. So it's a deck that exists. I don't know if it's worth spending that much money on it, especially since at that same price, you can get Mono Red Aggro, which is hovering around like $60 to $70 or so. And that deck at least is top 8ing major tournaments and seems to be much more competitive. Obviously, we don't know for sure until the metagame settles down. We are still really early in the new rotation, and I would actually caution people against putting too much money in any competitive deck at all. We just need more time for the metagame to settle down, but at least the mono red deck, it has been performing well at a higher level than this mono white deck that is kind of floating around but doesn't really have any, again, accolades to show for it. Anyway, yeah, I'm sad to say that the United Assault deck is pretty much dead. This is why Modern is my favorite format, because, well, the entry cost is higher, your cards never cease to be useful. You buy cards and you can always play them, and this doesn't happen. So yeah, there we go. Rest in peace, Benalish Marshall. You served us well. Be sure to pour one out for our homie. And while you do that, be sure to subscribe, because I still have to cover the Deadly Discovery deck, and while there is still hope for a Golgari mid-range deck, unfortunately, that deck is kind of looking bad as well. So yeah, if you feel like there is a hole in your heart and it isn't mendable, you can at least watch that video and revel in other people's misfortune, because people like to do that, right? Anyway, that video is coming soon. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, everyone. Normally I say I hope this video was helpful, but in this case, I think I just have to apologize for this video, well, not being very helpful. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.